That's way too much light on me. Hi, Becky. I see you're muted, but that's fine. I'm just saying hello.
Hello. And the dog saying hello.
I indicated to Chris Barnhart that I'd be on early if he wanted to get on. I'm not sure if he's going to or not. Sometimes people have anxiety about how this is going to work if they're going to run a program. He may have done it a number of times, though.
You'll be preaching to the choir here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We're
well, maybe
hungry
you
to
guys
hear
will sing too. I was looking for a picture of Barb destroying non-native vegetation, and I don't think I have one. I gotta ask you guys to send me something of you in your combat gear.
Yes.
Coming up.
I can do that.
We'll do that.
Okay. You guys look like you're right. You must be right in the middle of the creek there.
It is.
Oh,
And man, I'll tell you, it is cold.
In the
This water-
springtime.
Yeah, it is cold right now. It's good to see Dave Catlin.
So did you make other arrangements, Bob? Because I did go ahead and hit record on this.
Good. Yeah, we figured out a way. I got a hold of the other one, and they're recording. So.
Oh, okay.
and you'll never guess what the subject was for the other one. Invasive along streams.
Invasive plants along streams.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, people are still coming in. So, Greg, this is officially your show, so. You're on mute at the moment, though, so it's sort of let's make it a talkie show.
Oh, okay. Charlie told me this is his show tonight, so I'm actually going to turn it over to him pretty quickly. He said he'd run co-host, right, Charlie?
That's correct.
Okay. You can start anytime you'd like.
Okay, we'll start. And because I know our speaker tonight, have become to know him pretty well from so many different avenues within nature and the environment, I'm actually going to do a formal introduction that'll relax him a little bit. He's probably not sure what I would say otherwise, but in any case, I'm going to present this in a more formal way. Dr. Chris Barnhart is a distinguished professor of biology at Missouri State University, where he teaches biography and parasitology. And let me, Chris, are you formally retired, or are you still teaching on a regular basis?
No, I'm formally talking about retiring.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
I'm
that's
still
a great
teaching.
position. That's a great position to be in. His research focused on conservation-related biology of animals, including freshwater mussels and butterflies, By the way, if you haven't seen that mussel history that he has presented, it's awesome. Chris collaborates with state, federal, and private agencies concerned with endangered species restoration. He and his wife, Deb, create the Dr. Bill Ralston Native Butterfly House at the Springfield Greene County Botanical Center. Chris and Deb have directed a Glade Field entomology bug night, sorry about that, every year since 2009. We are truly fortunate for their support and desire to inspire another generation of conservation leaders of Glade. And I'll just say with one thing, had I had been somewhat younger than him rather than somewhat older, he would be another person I know in education who not only has a passion for what he teaches, but he has a passion for the student that he delivers his material to. I respect you highly. Now, Chris, you have to live up to it.
Okay, Charlie, I'll do my best. Well, thanks for the introduction, and I feel like I know you folks really well. So you have to be willing to take what he says with a grain of salt. I'm gonna mute Greg, and let's see, I'll mute anybody else who doesn't mute themselves. But if at some point you want to say something, by all means, unmute yourselves and interrupt. That's not a problem. Okay, I think I've got everybody that's here muted. There's 19 of us now, and that's great. And I'll share my screen. And I hope that you can all see my screen now. I expect you can. And I'm going to busy up my screen here, but I'll show PowerPoints in one panel and maybe have a chance to show a little video clip or two in another here. But again, if there's something you want to say, just interrupt me, just unmute yourself and interrupt me, because I won't pay any attention to you if I can't hear you. I'll be watching my slides. This is a talk that some of you have heard before, I'm sure, at least parts of it. It's kind of a Frankenstein monster now. I was asked to do a butterfly talk for the National Conservation Training Center this spring, and I tried to modify a talk that I've used for the Butterfly House and other sorts of things here in town for many years, called Touched by Butterflies. And well, we'll see how it goes. The outline of the talk is everybody loves butterflies, and I think that you folks that are focused on birds can appreciate that these are charismatic animals that appeal to people on multiple levels. And public interest and conservation actions right now are focused on the monarch, and it really should be expanded to other species. And I'll try to make that argument. The ecological argument here is that butterflies and moths are food for birds, especially nestling birds, and for bats and other wildlife. And that all of these depend on native flora, because butterflies are fairly host specific, and moths as well. And when I say butterflies, I'm including moths. And without the native plants, you're not going to have an ecosystem that's productive of native butterflies and moths. And then make an argument that live displays like the Butterfly House and the various avenues we have for citizen science now are important, because we can use these to promote what are called rewilding efforts. And I need to define what that is. I expect most of you already know, but rewilding is a term that really just started to be used in 1990, which is only 30 years ago. And it's kind of jumped up now. And it's a fairly common term, and it's used worldwide. I think it may have started mainly in Europe, but it's certainly used now in the United States. And it refers generally to any actions that encourage native biodiversity and ecosystem function and the persistence of native species with respect to land use. So it's any approach to land use that expands habitat for native species and helps to bring back wildlife and reconnect human activities to nature. And, you know, killing your lawn is one example of this. I gotta show you my shirt here. I'm very proud of this shirt right now. Can you see my shirt? It says, kill your lawn. And I got it from a website called Crime Pays But Botany Doesn't, which I'm really enjoying. It's a botany website. I put the Kipfers onto it. Maybe some of you are aware of it already, but it's great stuff, and it's very irreverent, and I like it. So kill your lawn and replace it with native vegetation. Kill the non-native vegetation. This is where I really wanted to have a picture of Barb Kipfer, but I couldn't find one. And it extends to other things too, like for instance, dam removal, which is very popular right now, to remove dams that have outlived their usefulness and restore rivers to their free-flowing form, which is much more supportive of native biodiversity. And rewilding is urgent, and you know why. We've had these immense declines that have only recently been well documented. In bird abundance, 25% decline in 50 years overall, 50% decline or more of grassland birds in the last 50 years, 45% decline in insect abundance. And this is in multiple places. Of course, it's best documented in places that have a strong natural history tradition like England and Germany. But insect abundance has declined by half in less than a half a century. And extinctions inevitably follow losses in abundance of this sort. And this has led to calls to preserve 30 to 50% of land for conservation. E.O. Wilson called for preserving half the world to preserve 90% of the species. And more detailed and maybe more politically compromised calls have been for 30% preservation of reasonably native vegetation. 30% of land for conservation. And there's a great report published in 2019 by the Center for American Progress, which is a liberal think tank. It's hard to tell, you know, when you read these titles, is that liberal or conservative? How could we know? You just look for opinions. Anyway, here's a map from their report, and it shows the natural area lost by region in the lower 48, and it shows it by number of acres that's been lost from these different regions. But this is the real take-home message here. The footprint of human development as a percentage of total land area in 2017 was nearly 60% of the Midwest, nearly 50% of the Northeast and the South, and of course the West is somewhat more natural, about 20% as a humanized landscape. So now's the time. I mean, this development is apace, and if we're going to preserve these areas, something needs to be done now. And the person that got me thinking about this was Doug Tallamy. You know, he came to town to talk a few years ago. This is not something that was really on my radar before I heard him talk, but he wrote a book in 2009 called Bringing Nature Home. And you know, very strongly made the point that native plants are key to preserving native biodiversity, because plant-feeding insects are the base of the food chain for birds and bats and other wildlife. And most of those, including Lepidoptera, are host plant specific, and they're not supported by native plants. So this is his basic argument, that we need to bring nature home, that we need to plant natives in the smallest patches of landscape that we have available, which is our homes and our yards. And that is a significant amount of terrain. And of course, it extends to municipal and county public lands, and it includes roadside right-of-ways, and all of this adds up, and all of it's important. Caterpillars in the food chain, and this is from Tallamy's research. He's not just arguing this, he does research on this, and observations from his lab show that a single pair of breeding chickadees has to find 6,000 to 9,000 caterpillars to rear a single clutch of young. That's a lot of caterpillars. And he has websites that document which native plants are the most supportive of native Lepidoptera, and therefore of birds and other wildlife. And he's got a top 10 list here, and it includes a lot of trees. Trees are very important, and you know, trees are something that people make choices about, that homeowners make choices about. So if you're looking for an excuse to decide what to plant, you don't need to look much further. than his websites and publications. And number one here is the oak. Now, that's not too taxonomically precise, but since oaks hybridize readily, maybe this is realistic. I happen to know there is biodiversity within the genus, and the insects do know the difference between red oaks and white oaks and so on. But broadly speaking, the oak, genus Quercus, supports 534 species of butterflies and moths, as well as producing a lot of mast that's important for mammals and birds and other critters. And there's 80 oak species in North America. There's other resources besides Talamy's books. The Nature Center had a screening a couple of years ago, I think now, of a movie called Hometown Habitat, which used to be available online. Currently, I think you have to pay a small fee to get access to it, but it's an excellent film. It's a 90-minute documentary focused on programs around the nation that are focused on urban wilding, restoration of native plants and wildlife in human-dominated habitats. And they showcase various programs, and one of the things that they showcase is the Missouri Prairie Foundation, which is one of our most important homegrown rewilding efforts, trying to restore native prairie. And this is, of course, the kind of habitat that is compatible with yards and roadside vegetation. So it's particularly important in our part of the world. And the Prairie Foundation has some great resources out there. They've got excellent webinar series. And I think I've got something linked. Yeah, this is the YouTube site for Missouri Prairie Foundation. And, you know, it seems like one a week, one a month sometimes. And it's lots of stuff that you can use, that you can apply if you're interested in growing native, which is a program that Prairie Foundation originated. And if you want to learn more about how to rewild your own property, you don't need to look much further than that. So that's great stuff. There's new programs cropping up. In April of this year, a program was announced in Springfield called Yard Ethic. And investing in a healthy yard, good for you, good for your neighbor. Well, what they mean by healthy is planting beautiful and beneficial natives in your yard. It's not about, you know, getting rid of your unsightly weeds. In some cases, it's about encouraging them. Well, much of the current interest in butterfly conservation is focused on one species, which is the migratory monarch butterfly. And I know you guys know this. This is a butterfly that's widespread in North America and Central America. And it has this very compelling habit of undertaking an annual migration where populations distributed as far north as Ontario fly all the way south to central Mexico, and there they spend the cold months of the winter roosting in ancient Oyamel fir forest. And it was always a mystery up until the 1970s as to where they were going. It wasn't known where they went. People just knew that they left and didn't know where they went. But a professor named Fred Urquhart and his wife Nora took this as a challenge, and they put out lots of questionnaires, and this was in the days before the internet. They asked people for information, and they established the first tagging programs. They developed adhesive tags and tried lots of different methods to do this, but eventually came up with something that worked. And they exported this idea and this technology to a lot of other folks, and these tagging studies were important in providing, you know, direction as to where they might be going. And they also contacted folks in regions that they thought were of interest and enlisted their help. And in 1975, a couple of Americans, well, one American, Fred Urquhart, no, I'm sorry, I'm confusing Fred the professor with the guy who actually made the discovery. It was a guy named Ken Brugger. Ken Brugger and his girlfriend, Catalina Trail, who's a Mexican native. And Ken was American. He was working in Mexico, supervising some kind of plant operation, factory operation. Anyway, they found the place, and it was known to the locals, but of course the locals weren't aware that anybody was looking. And they let Urquhart know, and he and Nora came down in 1976, the winter of 75, 76, and eventually this news got into National Geographic, and the rest is history. It's one of the most compelling natural history stories of the century. And there's been IMAX films made about it and so on. Well, almost as soon as it was discovered, it was evident that it was potentially very vulnerable. And when they started doing aerial surveys and ground surveys of the area of the roost in the mid-90s, it quickly became evident that the abundance was declining, that the roost area was declining. And there's been a lot of concern ever since because, the long-term trend doesn't look too good. Year before last, it bumped up to levels that hadn't been seen since '06, '07. But then this past winter, it was down again to about half of that. And of course, we don't know yet what's gonna happen this winter. But there's been a lot of research, and a couple of prominent researchers that are involved in this are Chip Orley is his name, but everybody calls him Chip Taylor, professor at KU, University of Kansas at Lawrence. He was a professor there when I was a grad student, so he's pretty old. And he is a guiding light and has been for many years, and he's published a ton of papers. I've got links here, and I'll make these slides available because there's a lot of links to resources here if you're interested. But he founded an organization called Monarch Watch as an interface between the public, the interested public, and the scientists. And he's a crusty old guy, and he's extremely clever and intelligent, and he's done some fantastic stuff. Another important researcher is Karen Oberhauser, who is now at the University of Minnesota. She used to be the director of Wisconsin Arboretum. I think I've got the polarity of that right. And she's also a very accomplished researcher and has a lot of students and has contributed a lot to our understanding. So why are the monarchs in trouble? Well, the prevailing hypothesis, which is supported by most research, not all research, but most, the prevailing hypothesis is that increasing use of glyphosate herbicide or Roundup has killed off all the host plants, the milkweeds that the monarchs depend on. And the reason that herbicide use has skyrocketed is that people started planting genetically modified crops. The weeds had basically they had evolved tolerance for the herbicide. And the tack that was taken was to generate crops that were genetically modified so they could handle really high doses of the herbicide. So, Monsanto's producing the genetically modified crops and Bayer is making the herbicide. And then the unholy union of these two created a monster that is both producing the crops that demand more herbicide and producing the herbicide that they demand. So it's a great business model, but it hasn't been particularly good for the wildlife. So this is overwintering hectares of monarch butterflies, which has fluctuated, but the trend is generally down. And this is the percent of herbicide that is Roundup tolerant crops, particularly corn, that's being planted. And it's a correlation, but it's pretty compelling that lack of the host plant is a major reason that monarchs have declined. And it's not just because of the herbicides killing the milkweed, it's also because there are more contiguous fields and there's less edge habitat that would support milkweeds. And it is a complicated story. I'm oversimplifying, but that's the simple story. So with this downward trend, the monarch, looks like it might be in trouble, so it would seem. And the Fish and Wildlife Service was petitioned by a bunch of lawyers who are the Center for Biological Diversity, also the Center for Food Safety, the Xerces Society for Invertebrate Conservation, and Professor Dr. Lincoln Brower, who unfortunately died a couple of years ago. The petitioning was in 2014, but the wheels turn really slowly. The decision deadline by the service as to whether the monarch is endangered or not is due this December. So they have to make the call. Is the monarch in danger of extinction or isn't? And I would argue that no, the monarch's not in danger of extinction. The monarch, in fact, is spreading itself around the world. You could even consider it to be an invasive species. It's spread out into all the Pacific Islands. It's in Australia, it's in New Zealand, it's in Europe, and it's gotten there in recent history, apparently under its own power. And the reason it's spread its range so widely is that people have moved its food plants around. People have planted milkweeds in places where milkweeds didn't used to occur. And the monarchs have found their host plants, and they're strong flyers. They can fly for thousands of miles. So they're doing a good job of putting themselves around. So I don't think the monarch is technically globally in danger of extinction, but the phenomenon of the migration, yeah, that's in danger. The Western population of monarchs is really on the ropes. Its numbers are way down and consistently down. So there's certainly conservation concern. So the service is doing what it does. Under the Endangered Species Act, it's examining the situation and assessing the status of the monarch butterfly. And there's a call going to be made pretty soon. Another interesting event was the U.S. Pollinator Research Action Plan was published in 2016. And of course, this was developed during the last Obama administration. And this is looking at pollinators generally, because there's a lot of concern, not just about the monarch, but about pollinating insects, which have a very substantial ecological role and an economic role. The various interests in monarch butterflies, they're very diverse. I mean, there's a ton of different agencies that are concerned about conservation of the monarch because it's a charismatic species. So not too long ago, they formed a consortium called the Monarch Joint Venture, partnering to conserve the monarch butterfly migration. And this organization now speaks broadly for all these different agencies that have an interest. A partnership of more than 90 federal and state agencies, NGOs, and so on. And they have published a monarch conservation implementation plan. So this has been going on for a decade. People have been developing the science and making suggestions about what to do. And now, because of the endangered petition, there's impetus and federal money to do something about it. And the Fish and Wildlife Service, as you probably know, has been dispensing tens of millions of dollars on behalf of planting milkweeds, specifically for monarch conservation. And just this year, this is the most recent news, this was in March or April, they completed the signing of Monarch Butterfly Nationwide Candidate Conservation Agreement on Energy and Transportation Lands. And this is being coordinated by the University of Illinois, Chicago. These candidate conservation agreements are standard practice for the service when they're considering listing a species. They invite people and agencies that have an interest, in other words, that have land and are doing activities that could potentially be impacting that endangered species. They invite those folks to participate in a planning agreement where they agree that they will do and not do certain things in exchange for a legal protection from the Endangered Species Act. So this was a big deal, and it will promote monarch conservation on millions of acres across the United States. The participants in this agreement, which is listed here, and again, I'll make these slides available, or you can Google this stuff, it's not hard to find it. There's more than 60 agencies and corporations. These are non-federal. So they're state, and local, and private landholders, and they're agreeing to provide habitat for the monarch on their lands. And they agreed to take certain conservation measures to reduce or remove threats and to improve the habitat. And of course, this means planting milkweed. And it's not just limited to milkweed, but the focus is very much on the monarch because after all, that's what's driving this is the Endangered Species Act. In return for these considerations, the participants are guaranteed that the service is not going to come back later and say, well, you have to do this instead, or you have to do more of that. They get a guarantee that additional measures will not be required in the future. And they also receive what are called take permits, which is, it's like the 007 or James Bond permit. It's the license to kill, basically. So if the agency has to do something that's killing an endangered species, like mowing your right of way, you get to do that if you have such a permit. So this is a good thing. I'm not implying in any way that it's not a good thing. And we've already seen fallout from it. Reuse, that means, should say request. There was a recent request that we received, and this was back in October from MoDOT. And it was a request for bids to do a research project, which is basically to review all the literature on vegetation management as it relates to highway right-of-way, or ROW vegetation, row vegetation. And, you know, it's a modest pot of money because it's basically just to do a literature review, but a colleague and I put in for this, and we'll find out at some point whether we got it or not. I thought it would be a great excuse to learn more about vegetation management. And I'm sure that some of you know a lot more about it than I do, but I can read. And, you know, it'll be interesting if we get to do it. They're asking for a review of best practices, best management practices for pollinator habitat along highway right-of-way. And that's not just monarch, but again, this is being driven by, I'm sure this is part of their carrying out of what they agreed to do for the monarch conservation agreement. Well, monarchs are just one species, and there are over 10,000 moth and butterfly species in our area. And there's 450 bees if you want to extend this to pollinators. And this is not the first time that transportation and energy agencies have had to think about this. You know, they've been thinking about this for quite a while. And I would, you know, the fact that MoDOT has asked for a review doesn't mean that they haven't been thinking about this already. Charlie, you know well that City Utilities has been planting milkweeds and other native vegetation on some of their properties here in town just in the last year. But a lot of this is being driven by this CCA, this conservation agreement. How do we expand this from monarchs to other species? Well, the problem with monarchs is that they're very narrowly host specific, and they feed on a plant that not many other organisms feed on. And, you know, there's maybe half a dozen conspicuous things that feed on monarch. One is the milkweed tussock moth, which I kind of think is sort of a mimic of the monarch butterfly larva. But to focus on just one species is very limiting. And we need to move beyond monarchs and milkweeds. And, you know, I think the best way to do this is to build public appreciation of native biodiversity of plants and animals, including monarchs, but also, in my case, including other species of butterflies and moths, which many of which are more important in their ecological role than monarchs are, frankly. They're not as charismatic, but they're more ecologically significant. We need to educate about the broad dependence of native biodiversity, read Lepidoptera there, on native plants. Native plants are the key. So whatever we can do to promote urban rewilding and replace, you know, kill your lawn, replace our sterile lawns and non-native plants with natives that support wildlife, that's a good thing. And of course, we need to encourage sustainable agricultural practices and permaculture that reduce pesticide and herbicide use. So that brings us to the Butterfly House, which was established by Dr. Bill Roston in 2009. And there are quite a few of you that have been involved with this. Some of you since that time. Our mission statement is to foster understanding of plant and animal relationships and promote the conservation of natural habitats and native species. And it's supposed to be an educational institution. And of course, it's also entertainment, but it's free. And, you know, if people are willing to take some education along with their entertainment, so much the better. This was Bill's idea. He drugged me into it. And then a couple of years later, he had a stroke and couldn't really do it anymore. And I've never forgiven him for that. Unfortunately, Bill died, you know, less than a year ago. And we miss him terribly, but it was a great idea. And he's done so many great things over there in the park and with his wildlife, his fish photography in particular. He had a huge impact on my career. And I'll carry this on as long as I can, if for no other reason than Bill started it. And it's not unusual for there to be a butterfly house. This is the age of butterfly houses. But I'm going to argue that our butterfly house is different. It's very different. This is the age of butterfly houses in the same sense that it's the age of municipal aquaria. You know, in the last couple of decades, a very large number of big cities have developed aquaria and butterfly houses. Great entertainment. We've got the Sophia Sachs butterfly house, part of the Missouri Botanical Garden. The Audubon has developed the insectarium down in New Orleans. This is fantastic, Natural History Museum. Cincinnati Parks, they've got the Crone Conservatory, and this is kind of a pattern too, that they seasonally do a butterfly display in the Crone Conservatory, which is largely a plant display. The same thing happens at Powell Gardens in Kansas City. Got a big botanical garden that seasonally develops a butterfly display. This is the Crone Conservatory in Cincinnati here. And we've got our local for show butterfly house, the Butterfly Palace down in Branson. And it, I think, is kind of typical of a commercial butterfly house, which was a startup. It wasn't associated with an existing botanical garden or anything of that sort. This is a business venture. And these commercial butterfly houses vary in sophistication, but most of them are there for spectacle. They display a mix of showy tropical species and showy tropical flowers, and they give minor emphasis to the life cycle and native species. They purchase their livestock as pupae from international suppliers. And yes, it gets people interested, but this is not the kind of butterfly house that we've tried to develop. The Audubon Insectarium is closer, and this is a very high quality and high dollar operation. They've got fantastic displays that don't just focus on butterflies and moths, you know, they focus on the significance of insects to the life of the local community in New Orleans. So they talk about insects as vectors for disease. They also showcase insects for their aesthetic value. So this is just about colors, you know, and that's okay. Now this is, I would call this spectacle, but it does give you an appreciation for biological diversity. They talk about love bugs, and they've got a Volkswagen van as part of this exhibit. And they talk about how these little insects have become very abundant seasonally in the South, these love bugs, how that relates to their sexual cycle. And the New Orleans Gallery talks about impacts on the city in general. So a fantastic place, I highly recommend it. But their butterfly exhibit is not that different from the Butterfly Palace. They've just got a lot of spectacular tropical species and tropical flowers and not much for interpretation. You know, I call this butterfly pornography. It's the objectification of something that people find beautiful, like these bird-winged butterflies from New Guinea. We don't learn anything about the biology of bird-winged butterflies from New Guinea, but we can go, gee whiz, you know, that's a spectacular insect. Our approach is to focus on native species and display them as part of their natural environment. These are the same species that you can find right outside the door. We don't have an airlock here because we're displaying the same butterflies and moths that can be found outside. We're just upping their density by keeping their predators and parasites mostly outside, not entirely. And we provide them with their native host plants so that people can see how they operate. And the admission is free. It's run by volunteers. Many of you are volunteers. We've got kind of a minimum of interpretive signage, but we always try to associate each species of butterfly with its host plant. And this is the message that the docents are trying to convey, along with answering questions. And it's because it's free, we depend completely on volunteers and donations. And many of you will recognize yourselves here. And thank you all. This was part of the monarch tagging a couple of years ago. And, you know, again, we display caterpillars and plants first and foremost, not just the butterfly house. It's really a caterpillar house. This is Butterfly Festival, the Caterpillar Petting Zoo. And caterpillars are great. Everybody loves caterpillars too. Well, maybe not everybody, but, you know, kids can be taught. The whole life cycle, including the chrysalids. And, you know, the event of hatching is miraculous. Don't mind using that word. The event of eclosion from the pupal stage is miraculous and just goes on every day in the butterfly house. We raise the livestock at home. We keep them safe. We bring the chrysalids in and hang them up just before they're going to hatch. Now, that is not inconsistent with having the whole life cycle there in the butterfly house too. It's just that we don't entirely rely on that as the source of our livestock, because the parasites do get in and some of the predators do get in. And frankly, if we let the butterflies and moths become as abundant as they would, well, the vegetation would soon be gone. We're operating on a very dynamic equilibrium in the butterfly house. Enough butterflies and caterpillars that you can see them, but not so many that they totally destroy the plants. So that means raising a lot of them at home. Again, we raise only local species for display so that we minimize the collecting. And certain times of the year, that means, you know, the living room is stacked up with boxes full of violets, and we have to go get violet leaves. These are mostly from the Kipfers, Dandy Butterfly Garden in their backyard. And, you know, we raise these butterflies up, and then at certain times of the year, they can be very abundant in the butterfly house. And this is spectacle, but it's a more meaningful kind of spectacle. It's the kind of spectacle that you can see if you go out into the fields and look for it. So, you know, we're proud of that. I think it's a good thing that we're doing. We raise moths as well. The big silk moths are very showy and they eat a tremendous amount. It becomes impractical to supply large numbers of them with food. So we hang bags on the trees and we stock the branch inside the bag with caterpillars and then come back later and collect the cocoons. And in this way, we can reduce the workload for raising these. The host plant connection is compelling, and it focuses people on plants pretty quickly. So we've got pawpaw trees in there, quite a few of them. That's not a host for a whole lot of butterflies, but it's for a particularly beautiful butterfly called the zebra swallowtail. And the geographic range of the zebra swallowtail very closely parallels the range of the pawpaw, a native fruit tree. This is the butterfly here in the background. So that's a great story. And if people want zebra swallowtails, they need to plant pawpaw. Fortunately, it doesn't work the other way. You can't get pawpaws by raising zebra swallowtails, but you can attract them by planting pawpaw, and you can make them more abundant, and you can increase the likelihood of other people becoming aware of them. Now, we focus on native plants, of course, but we have to be careful not to demonize non-native plants, because everybody plants non-native plants in their garden, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. This is a shrub called buddleia, or butterfly bush, and it's Asian, and a lot of people have it in their gardens because it attracts butterflies, including monarchs, and it's a useful resource for monarchs, especially for migrating monarchs, because it blooms well into the summers. And I wouldn't fault anybody for planting buddleia. We don't limit ourselves to butterflies, and we don't limit our activities to the butterfly house. We've got about 40 docents that make regular contributions, either by raising livestock, and particularly by being in the butterfly house to meet with visitors and educate them. Or Dorothy counts our cash every week. You know, there's lots of different tasks to do. And one of the things we really enjoy is looking at moths, which we typically do once a year during National Moth Week. There is a National Moth Week. And last year it was July 20th to 28th. I haven't updated this slide. And moths get a lot of attention, and they should. You know, most people come in and want to see butterflies, but the moths are just as spectacular. Most people think that moths are drab, but they're not all drab. Some of them are extremely colorful. You just have to go out and look for them at night, or be willing to raise them so that you can get a chance to see them. And they make spectacular display animals, and we do that. The moths are 94% of the species of Lepidoptera north of Mexico. Only 6% of this order of insects is butterflies, the day-flying clade. And you might notice I'm sort of transferring now into talking about the kinds of educational stuff that we try to teach the docents. These are the sorts of things that everybody needs to know so that you can answer questions. Maybe questions that you had or questions that your kids are going to have. What's the difference between butterflies and moths? Most of your school kids know that butterflies fly during the day. They've got some morphological specializations. But we need to think about moths more. This is the family tree of Lepidoptera. So this is a branching diagram that shows the relationships between different families of Lepidoptera. And the ones shown in black you would call moths. The ones shown in blue here, this little bar, are the butterflies and their close relatives, the skippers. So what this shows you is that they're just one little branch of this huge family tree of Lepidoptera, most of which fly at night and are called moths. And the scale bar here, right here, see that little bar there? That's 10,000 species. This is worldwide. So, how many kinds of moths are there? Well, there's a lot. Again, these are examples of the education materials that we present every year. In April this year, if you're interested, get yourself on the mailing list. Hopefully we'll all be immune by then and we can all meet at the Nature Center instead of on Zoom. But we talk about identification, and it turns out that there are 130 butterfly species in our area, which is a little intimidating, but you just use the family tree. There's only 5 families of butterflies in our area. So it's not too bad to learn the families. There are the skippers, 43 species, the brushfoots, and this includes all the big showy stuff like fritillaries. The gossamer wings, that's the blues and the hair streaks, the little butterflies. The whites and the sulfurs, 18 species, and then everybody's favorite, the swallowtails. Well, there's only 7 species locally of swallowtails. A lot more diversity in these other groups. The skippers are neglected. We only display a couple of species in the butterfly house, particularly the silver-spotted skipper. And the reason that they don't get much attention is they're small and rather uniform. But, there's a tremendous diversity there. And they're cute. It's okay to say they're cute. Beautiful is one thing, cute is another. They're definitely cute. They look like small children because they've got relatively big heads and big eyes for their bodies. The brushfoots, more familiar to people, 34 species in our area. So this is the kind of information we would ask you to learn if you come to work in the butterfly house. And, the brushfoot butterflies are the 4-legged butterflies. This is easy stuff. You look at a butterfly, it's only got 4 legs instead of 6. Well, that puts it in the family Nymphallidae. It's a brushfoot butterfly. Painted ladies, fritillaries, monarchs, and so on. There's just a plethora of resources out there now, and this is true for birds too. I'm sure you know that there are websites that really facilitate identification and information about distribution and make it possible for you to contribute to knowledge too. So iNaturalist is my current favorite. You take a picture, you upload it, it tells you what it is, it puts it on a map, and right away you feel like you've made a contribution to our knowledge of these wonderful things. And iNaturalist is not just for butterflies, it's for birds and everything else. And if you're using eBird, great. But for everything else, including plants, I think iNaturalist is the way to go, and it's extremely powerful. Bug Guide, for those who are a little bit more sophisticated and for things that are harder to identify, it's an older site. More erudite for sure, but doesn't give you that quick feedback that you get from iNaturalist. Bimona, likewise, this is focused just on butterflies and moths. Bug Guide is all insects. Bimona is a great site. It's an ambitious effort for sure, but again, the feedback isn't as quick. And they generate the same kind of data, perhaps a little bit better vetted that iNaturalist does. Journey North focuses on migrations, and this is great for birds, for ruby-throated hummingbirds, for example, which they track assiduously, and for monarchs. And they've got an international component, and it's just great stuff. Caterpillars are increasingly easy to identify, largely through the work of David Wagner at University of Connecticut. I just found out recently that that one of our former grad students here, who's now working for the National Park Service, was a buddy when he was a kid of David Wagner. And we're hoping to get David Wagner to advise us on our regal fritillary project that we're doing with the Conservation Department. Another thing that I always like to talk about, and I know I'm getting a little long-winded here, but I'll try to buzz through this, is what we can learn from butterflies, not just the ecological lessons, but how does maybe natural history in general help us to relate to the world and relate to each other? What can we learn from the butterflies about ecological communities, the balance of nature, about human nature? And, people can have unrealistic expectations about nature, especially about insects. So, here's an insect. These are paper wasps. And one of the lessons from the butterfly house is that you do not want paper wasps in your butterfly house. They sting people, they eat caterpillars, they learn very quickly if there's a hole in the net, and they come in and they gather the caterpillars and they eviscerate them while you watch, and then they roll up the meat and they fly it back to their nest and tell all their buddies to come and do the same. It's a bad thing in the butterfly house, but paper wasps and other predators of caterpillars are absolutely essential for stable ecosystems. And part of me wants to let them, take their cut in the butterfly house, because we've always got more caterpillars than we need, so it seems. There's also parasites, and this is frustrating. You raise a caterpillar, or you find a chrysalis in the butterfly house and you hang it up in the chrysalis box hoping that it will hatch. And instead of a butterfly coming out, you get a collection of little parasitoid wasps, Brachymeria. And there was a female wasp who laid her eggs on this caterpillar, and then they grew up inside the chrysalis and ate the butterfly, and then came out to go off and infect more chrysalids. And that seems really nasty. So like Bob and Barbara, they asked the Wolf School kids, is this a good thing or a bad thing? And the answer, Bob, you can unmute yourself and tell me the answer. Bob, are you there?
It depends.
It depends. That's the answer. It depends on your context.
We don't think about that context most of the time.
It's a very important point. If it were not for the predators and the parasites, the moths and the butterflies would defoliate the earth. And that would not be a good thing. All right. This is what happens in the butterfly house. We keep the paper wasps out. And the cabbage whites, they destroy the kale. Well, we just wanted there to be a few cabbage white caterpillars on the kale so that we could show them to people. We didn't want them to become so abundant that they skeletonize the kale, but that's a good lesson too. And it's a lesson that people need to learn. It's all about balance. It's about the balance of nature. And the predators and parasites are not bad. They're not bad, they're essential. There's lessons about diversity in the butterfly house too. And this might seem trivial, but I don't think it is, especially for a kid. This is a kind of moth, the Virginian tiger moth, and the caterpillars are polymorphic. You've got black ones, you've got brown ones, you've got white ones. These could all be siblings. They could all be grown from eggs of a single female. It's a very polymorphic species. People are polymorphic species too. We come in different colors. And when you tell the kids that the black and the brown and the white caterpillars are all the same species, I think that's maybe seems like a trivial message, but it's an important one. And there's more elaborate information about diversity here too. This is a species that we've been looking for the last few years. It hasn't been seen since the 1990s. It's an endemic species, a species found only in central Missouri, called the Ozark woodland swallowtail, Papilio joanni. So it's a species that's unique to our area, and it turns out on examination genetically that it's a hybrid. It originated, now it's a valid species, it's real, it breeds true, but it originated as a hybrid of the western swallowtail, or so-called northern swallowtail, Papilio macaon, and the common black swallowtail, Papilio polixenes. Now, these don't currently overlap in their range, but sometime, probably during the last glaciation, their ranges overlapped and they begat Papilio joanni, and it's persisted. And it turns out that hybridization doesn't just generate one new species, it can generate bursts of evolutionary diversification. This is a paper that was published just a year ago, or maybe it's 2 years ago now. It's the phylogeny, the genetic relatedness of all species of North American butterflies. And in this paper, they identify, as indicated in green here, clades where there's been very rapid diversification, the generation of lots of new species in a short time, where time is the distance from this perimeter into the center, okay? So these green areas, these are places where, you know, a number of species diversified from a common ancestor in a short time. And they show genetically that the point of origin was a hybrid, where two different species broached the barrier between them, successfully hybridized, generating a species that had a lot of genetic potential. It had the genetic resources of two species now combined in one. And that seems to trigger diversification and the generation of multiple new species like Papilio joanni. So that's kind of cool. I mean, it's an objective argument for not only diversity, but the mixing of diversity, which is something that some people have a visceral dislike of. But the people that look at ancient human DNA tell us that our own species, Homo sapiens, hybridized frequently with other species of humans, including Neanderthals, Denisovans, and others, to generate the gene pool that we have in the world today. Important messages. Another lesson from the butterflies is about biogeography, about the importance of place. Springfield Chamber of Commerce says that everywhere should be like this, which is a questionable assertion, I think. And if you look at this display at the Sachs Butterfly House, it's a map. You can't really see it here, but it's a world map with the different species of butterflies that are found in different places laid out on this map. It was a lot of work to put that together. So, you know, down here in the Caribbean, you've got different butterflies than you do. Well, here's Diana fritillary, which is an endemic in Arkansas and adjacent parts of the East. Different butterflies in different places. And this is true. This is the Sonora blue. Deb and I took a couple of trips looking for this years ago, traveled back to Southern California specifically to find this butterfly. And to find it, you go to particular places in desert canyons in Southern California. And there you find its host plant, which is Dudleya lanceolata, a little succulent. And those are the only places that you're going to find this butterfly. So that is a fact about biogeography, the fact of endemism, and the fact that you have to protect particular places to protect particular species. On the other hand, there are species whose survival depends on protection over a wide range of geography, like the monarch. You know, the monarchs, they fly south all the way to Mexico from Ontario. And if you're going to conserve them, you have to worry not just about milkweeds and cornfields in Iowa, but you've got to worry about fir forests in montane Mexico. Migration links many places, and it's not just monarchs. There's a lot of other butterfly species that are migratory. So conservation is more than a local issue. It can be very local, and it can be very broad, not local at all. I probably got too many of these, but here's one about sex. That'll wake everybody up, at least briefly, right? Okay, what can you learn about sex from the butterflies? Well, one is that, yeah, they do it, and they'll do it no matter who's looking, and the kids will ask you what they're doing, or they'll tell you what they're doing. And here's something interesting, though. Butterflies have gynandromorphs, and these crop up with some regularity. This is a female of the variable Antipeony, and this is a male of the variable Antipeony. And this is what's called a bilateral gynandromorph. It's an individual who is female on its left side and male on its right. This happens in birds too. And it has to do with the genetic mechanism for sex determination, that you can actually have individuals that are half boy and half girl right down the middle. Or maybe just a quarter, like here's one wing of this Automeris, this Io moth. It's got one wing that's female and 3 wings that are male. Well, this leads us to questions about sex determination, but more importantly, it shows us that sex determination is biology. It's biology. It's not sociology. It's not a matter of personal choice. In large respect, it's biological. And I think that is an important message, one that a lot of people have yet to learn. We also learn about death, and the kids pick up dead butterflies in the butterfly house and they ask about them, and sometimes we pile them up on the table so they can handle them and look at them. And it's a pretty gentle way to experience death and talk about it. And we reassure them that these butterflies laid eggs and that you can go see their babies, their caterpillars, and they're still growing, and that life is a circle. It's not a dead end. It doesn't end when we die. Reproduction keeps everything moving on down the line. And butterflies, of course, trend into religious interpretations too. A lot of people find them to be icons of transformation and resurrection, and that's okay too. I think that that doesn't interfere with us feeling that they're valuable and conveying all this other information that we have to share. So I'll end just with a plea that those of you that haven't already joined us, consider it. We were in action all summer. We wore masks in the butterfly house, and our visitors were down, but we still had probably 25,000 people that visited this year. Might have been 40 if we hadn't had the COVID, but join us. It's a pretty active group. I feel like it's a social group, less so this year than most years, but we'd love to have more of you there. We're under the auspices of Friends of the Garden, and that's what I got. And be happy to answer any questions that you might have, if I didn't talk too long.
Chris, I have a question. I have a question that relates to wilding our yards. Have they studied how mobile different species are? I want to think of yard. You can do your yard. You can plant native species in your yard, but it may well be that there's several miles from your yard to some other significant source of whatever native plant it is you put out. How are these? I mean, obviously monarchs are mobile, but what about these other species? Will they find the violets that I put out there or the other stuff?
There's no simple answer to that, and I'm sure that the answer varies depending on the species that you're talking about. But in my personal experience, when we planted stuff in the backyard, hoping to attract certain species, they show up, and they can show up the day after you plant things. That's how it was with giant swallowtail. We planted a shrub called wafer ash in our backyard that we got from the Middletons. And literally the next day after they put it in, we saw the butterflies there and we found their eggs on the plants. So it's like, yeah, they're out there and you might not have ever seen them there before. But, we've seen this with several species in our yard. We planted for them, and if you plant for them, they will come.
I certainly find it to be true of my kale.
Yeah, the cabbage whites, it's like they just spring up out of the ground somehow. How do they get there? They're not that strong a flyer, but yeah, I think that, if you're in the middle of town, things may be a little bit slower to develop than if you're on the edge. And admittedly, our house is on the edge of town. So there may be populations closer to some places than others, but yeah, you should try it. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? You might have to go to the butterfly house and get some caterpillars and move them onto your plants. And you can do that.
Another question out there?
Where can I find out more about the new yard ethic program? When I share with people about the native things that I'm growing, it's great. People are interested, but then, I end up having a next door neighbor who started spraying for everything, and I'm just looking for more like friendly ways to talk about it. And I wondered if that yard ethic and the sign kind of thing might help.
Well, Jill, you've obviously found a bunch of like-minded people here. So I guess you have to start converting your neighbors. And I don't know, I haven't looked into the yard ethic program. It only started this year. And, you can Google it. I'm sure you can find it pretty quick. But what they're pushing, what kinds of materials they're offering, frankly, I don't know. I need to look into it.
Did you say that's a local program?
I'm sorry?
Did you say that's a local program?
Yeah, it's in Springfield. Yeah. The yard ethic
Carrie Lamb is overseeing that, I think.
Carrie Lamb. Myra, where does Carrie work?
City of Springfield.
At the environmental, for the city, at the environmental offices there.
Okay. Be a good place to start.
I have a question, Chris.
Greg.
Ozark Society just gave Glade a grant for this next coming summer. Hopefully we'll be able to have Glade again. But one of the things that they did was, Kendall was the one that wrote that grant, and he received word from them. Is there anything that you would like to have? And they mentioned the Diana Fritillary book that they have. Yeah. And Kendall ended up getting a copy of it for each one of the participants in Glade. So my story is, or my question is there any chance that they would run into a Diana Fritillary in Drury-Mincy?
Yeah, it's not inconceivable. It's not likely though. I've seen one Diana Fritillary in my life, and in the last couple of years, we've gone looking for them a few times unsuccessfully.
Okay.
But I know people that have seen them.
Are they indigenous to a certain region?
Tom Riley, yeah. Tom Riley knows quite a lot about Diana.
Oh, okay.
And
he's from
he'd be the person to ask. The place that I saw them was in the Boston Mountains in Arkansas. And I've
okay, so they are mountainous or Ozarkian.
Yeah, they are. And they have been collected in Missouri, but their center of abundance right now seems to be in hollers in Arkansas.
Okay.
And further east. There's quite a few of them in Tennessee and Virginia. They're not doing that well in the Ozarks. And I would love to work with them. They're not on the endangered list. I think that we should try to get them into the butterfly house just as, to display. But we're distracted now by regal fritillary. This is a prairie specialist, as you know, that is probably headed for listing as endangered. And we managed to get a small grant from the Conservation Department to work on regal fritillary. I'll share my screen again here. And can you see this? Can you see the butterfly here?
Yes.
Okay, this is regal fritillary. And it's a species that depends on high quality prairie. And it used to have a very broad distribution that's been narrowed to prairie remnants now. And the Conservation Department has been surveying it for the last several years. So they know a lot about its abundance and distribution. And what we're interested in is the overwintering biology of the larvae and how that relates to management practices on prairies, like burning. So it's very similar in its life cycle to the great spangled fritillary, and we've got a lot of experience with those. So we made the argument that, yeah, we can raise these things, and now we're trying to do that. We collected a few females this past fall, and we got about 1,000 eggs or about 1,000 caterpillars now, and we're going to do some experiments with them over the winter if we can keep them alive. So we're excited about that. And yeah. And the Diana is not a prairie specialist. The Diana is a woodland or woodland edge species, but they both feed on violets. All the fritillaries feed on violets, which is kind of remarkable. So they're adapted to these very different habitats, but they're using host plants in the same genus. And they have just a single brood, and they overwinter as a tiny, tiny caterpillar, which is a very difficult way to get through the winter. A microscopic caterpillar down there on the floor where the ants are and other predators. And you know, they wake up early in the spring when the violets are just sprouting and get to work and become butterflies by May. The males die in July, and the females last until fall, until September. So it's an interesting lifestyle, and it's fascinating to me that it works in things as different as prairies and woodlands.
Okay, let's take another one if we have one more.
Oh, Charlie, I have a comment. This is Barb Kipfer.
Mm-hmm.
We became a yard ethics certified gold yard this year. One of the things they do, of course, is you get signs, and we get to have two signs. We have one for our front yard and one for our backyard, because there's also a street behind our house, which was a bonus. But it is a community effort. The city of Springfield is involved in, and also I think James River Basin Partnership is involved in it, because it's wants to help people learn to beautify their yards and save money, conserve water, reduce stormwater pollution, and create habitat. And I have had people ask me, what does that mean? Where did that come from? So it gives you a chance to have a chat with a neighbor.
Okay.
Some of those neighbors say, hey, can I look around? We take them on a distancing tour, Barb does. And let me tell you, going back to the question you had about habitat, we have lots of habitat. All of the birds in the neighborhood come in to eat. All of the things that are on the plants, over 100 species of native plants, and it makes a wonderful island. And if we just put more of those islands together, as Dave was pointing out, we wouldn't be talking about islands, we'd be talking about an archipelago.
And I was also thinking about how when we first planted spice bush and pipe vines, it was true, they came. I was amazed. The spice bush was like within the first couple of days, and the pipe vines was just a matter of weeks.
And the non-flying or poor flying species that are on the milkweed beetles, milkweed bugs that you've planted, they shall find you.
I suspect that these isolated patches of host plants are more productive than larger contiguous areas, because it's harder for the predators and parasites to find them if they're out there on an island.
Definitely agree.
I'll take this moment real quick to embarrass Barbara Kipper a little bit. She'll be becoming the next president of our Springfield Plateau Master Naturalists here in about a month. So congratulations. We're going to be looking forward to having Barbara's leadership for that group. It's a great thing. I'm going to say, Chris, I wish that we had the capability like the sports activities have, where we could have this loud applause ring out during this period, because your presentation was superb. It was great. It's the best one you've ever done, but I could maybe think that every time you do one. But it was just great. Every part of it was great, and we really appreciate you being.
Thanks, Charlie.
You didn't know sometime earlier in the year that got delayed, and we had to kind of process to the time that we kind of took on this virtual thing with some effort, and finally able to have Chris join us, and it's just been a superb program. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I'll say another thing. Bob Kiffer took a picture of me a few years ago where we were capturing butterflies down on their place and I have to say Bob and Barbara's place, because I get in trouble if I say just one. But I notice now Patty Hatcher's under threat. I'm not sure this butterfly may carry her off any moment, because it looks like just about the right size at the one that was on my finger that you took a picture of some years ago. I know most of you don't know what I'm talking about, but some of you have seen that picture. Don't trust Bob Kiffer with a camera. I'll just say that. Reminds me of Bob Ball that we miss so much. Okay, with this part of the...
Hey, Chart, one more thing.
Sure.
I think I have your answer. Sorry, I interrupted you. Can you hear
Hey.
So, thank you, Dr. Barnhart. Go ahead, Charlie.
Oh, okay. That's great. By the way, welcome everybody. It was great to have everybody to hear. Can't see them all. I don't know how many are on our list tonight, but I'm glad you could make it. And so basically, I'm going to talk about Christmas bird count. Probably many of you are wondering. Maybe you've heard parts about it and what's going to happen, what's going on. I've talked with the teams and Greg Samuel, the Springfield compiler, and myself for Taney County, and what we're looking forward to Christmas bird count. Before I get into that, do we have any other quick announcements that someone needs to make? Okay, so I guess we'll move right on. This year, we have received a word from National Audubon Society that we had the choice of either canceling Christmas bird count, but we can continue to have a Christmas bird count if we choose, but we have to follow rather strict guidelines that are provided. And let me make it clear that the Christmas bird count is really a National Audubon Society product. And so obviously they're very conscious about concerns of the health of the people who are going to participate in any kind of direction or instruction they may give with the conduct during the COVID period. But they gave us the option to say we could either cancel it for this year or go ahead. Greg Samuel and I have both agreed that we would do a count. Springfield will be, I believe it's on December 16th and
19th.
19th. Yeah, I've done this before. So I'm hung up with 16 for some reason. December 19th, Saturday, and then Taney County will be conducting the Taney County count on December 26th, Saturday after Christmas. Now, kind of the not so good news is it is a very closed and restricted count this year. The count must be basically just conducted by the leaders of the different groups, and basically only by them or people that, for instance, actually, let me read the statement. You'll love it. It says, carpooling may only occur when within existing familiar or social pod groups. Basically, what that we've learned more meaning. What I just come off just an hour with the Christmas Bird Count National Audubon Society, who are being really somewhat more specific. That means basically the people that have had groups, that person, or say their wife, or people who they know are as safe as they are. In other words, either that they're safe, and other that they could have a person in the car. It could be a good friend or whatever the relationship is. But they really want you to be very cautious to have anyone else in your car, unless you really have a very clear understanding of what their association has been with other people. So that's kind of, and so basically each group leader is going to make sure that their area is counted, probably in some cases just one person, that leader, or that person and their wife, or other kind of relationship or close circumstance they have with the person that they feel that it's safe to do that. And that's the way the count's going to have to be counted this year. So many of you that have participated will not be able to participate this year directly in the field. There may be ways when, let's say that there's a carpool that has other people in their group in the past that could separately, in a different car, count another part of that same count area, share the count area space. The sum of that count would still be put together as if they were just one group. That is one of the potentials that could be accomplished if the group leader feels that's appropriate. And then that's a tough news, and I'll be glad to take any questions, because I'm not sure I made that totally clear. I hopefully did. I think everybody understands. Basically, it's very, very restricted. The other good news, couple of good news pieces of that they're looking at, because some of you that have participated now will not be able to go in the carpool with whoever the group leader is. Probably they're expecting will increase feeder counts. So we would encourage any of you that, and in fact, whether you ever did a Christmas bird count, you can always do a feeder Christmas bird count. All we would ask in that case is that if you're going to do a feeder count for Christmas, let the leader for that area know, so that they don't drive by and pick off your birds and you have both of you counting the same location. Because I know sometimes we go by yards and we see feeders and we pick up birds as a result of it. So you can do that. The other really great idea, this was from Dave Catlin. We're actually, while we can't have and not allowed, we're told not absolutely not to have a together grouping social. We like to do, love to do. We don't have to do that. We can't do that, but what we can. So, for us to have a connection, we'll send to everybody, whether they were a part of the count, whether they've ever did a count, if they're a member or they hear about it and they want to have a connection at 7 p.m., at least for Taney County, for 7 p.m. That evening, we'll have a compilation gathering by Zoom. So you can still join in and see what the count went like. We could talk about the birds that we've seen. So that's and I'm sure Greg, I don't know whether Greg Samuel has said anything to you about that for Springfield or not, Dave. I don't know. He has not yet. Okay.
He hasn't responded to my suggestion.
Okay. I mean, I think he's open to that. He just doesn't know where he's at, how he personally can connect to it. But that's with both counts. Doesn't make any difference. But okay, I'll see him again. I'll see if we can't get a more direct response there. Are you open to doing that, David?
Well, yeah, I've suggested it. I suggested to Greg that we do that, and you were breaking up a little bit, Charlie. So let me just repeat what you said. We'll do we'll do a compilation, but it'll be via Zoom, and because we're doing it via Zoom, it'd be easy for anybody who wants to participate to do so, whether they've been out in the field that day, or just looking at their feeders, or in a different locale, like Brooke, for instance. Brooke, if you wanted to join us for a compilation, you would have the opportunity to do that from Columbia. So, I think it's not quite the same as being together and having some of Liza's turkey chili, but it's still an opportunity to share.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. That was very much better than I expressed it. So in any case, if any of you have any other further questions, you can always email. I'll probably put together, or I will put together, kind of a sheet again, replaying their guidelines. They may revise them again. And also, they said there's a potential. I don't think Missouri's under threat, but that some Christmas bird counts may even be canceled with that totally without choice. But that's more, I think, in the states where there's states where they don't want people crossing state lines, but people live on state lines, though we do have that at Kansas City and St. Louis both, that circumstances would become severe if state would close, maybe close activity. But I don't see that happening at Missouri. I don't think that's a real threat. As long as something locally doesn't shut it down, and I don't think that'll happen either. And if we do it correctly, we should be able to do it safely. There's a lot of people talking about the count will be down. I'm not sure that the numbers may be, but I'm not sure that still moving around the species count may still be pretty decent, just that we'll be moving around. So in any case, if anybody have any questions about that they want to bring up right now?
Do I just need to get with you regarding the Taney count? The Martins won't be participating because of health reasons. And can I get a map or something from you of my area?
Yeah, we got plenty of time on that. I'll send you more material than you're going to want, Jill. I'll send out maps. I do that every year in any case to the leaders. I'll send out maps. I'll send up some guidelines with respect to how do you count mileage and walking and driving and the importance of it, and some other background material checklists. I'll send those out. I put together a packet. I'll still be putting together that packet and send it out. You just email it out to you.
Thank you. I've been spoiled. Usually, Steve drives, Beth Beth counts all the birds, records them all, and I just get to look for the birds and stop and eat lunch and go to the potluck. So I have to do a little more work this year, I guess.
Yeah, we all have to do a little bit more conscious. We're going to have to be careful, and we'll do the best we can. They know it's a COVID year. They know it's a restricted count, but I don't know. At least we don't want to around here if we can. We all love this opportunity that we get every year to participate. So, okay. Anything else? Well, I hate after such a good program to leave on a sour note kind of thing. Sorry about that, guys. That was such a good program. Such a wonderful. I'll have to thank him for that even again. So is the president still here? Does he have any?
Yes, the president is still here. The only thing I have is there's a birdseed sale on Saturday. We have plenty of work. With COVID, you have to reduce your staff down to a minimum in order to keep everybody as safe as possible. We've moved the seat out to the front sidewalk, or we will. And you guys might have looked at the forecast. If you're coming to pick up seed, there's an increasing chance of rain as the day goes by. And now I think it's going to be possibly raining all day. So anyway, think about coming early so we can get out of there early. That's about all I have to say. Thanks,
Okay.
Charlie.
Okay. And I do have one real quick comment I wanted to make. If many of you are probably not in the habit, but you might work on this, but particularly do this during the Christmas bird count. I got to tell you, National Audubon has the most functional activity, broad scope kind of web page you could ever want. And I would encourage you to go there and scan around, but particularly specifically right now, take a look at the Christmas bird area, and there's a lot of material there that you can read and so forth. And they've added a new section this year, and it's called Where Are the Birds At? It's a new data kind of operation that you can go in and get the trending of any of the birds, many of the birds we got across the United States. They kind of gave us a demonstration on it. I think I will even be able to use it, and that's not my top skill. But in any case, take a look and go to that. I think there's a red pole. It's a picture of a red pole, and you click on it, and then you can go in and do a trend data look at the different birds across the country and kind of see how they've been trending and where they are trending up and down and sideways. So in any case, any last things before we go our different directions? So thanks for all joining in tonight, and thanks for listening to a really great program, and think positive, be safe. We love you all. Bye-bye.
Goodbye, everybody.